Okay, so we're going to do another example of using Pascal's triangle to expand this binomial. And remember what we mean by binomial. We're talking about a polynomial that has two terms. So this is one term and that's another term. So this would be an example of a binomial, whatever is inside the parentheses. Now, before we go ahead and expand this one, 2g minus 1 to the fourth power, we need to first understand how Pascal's triangle works. So we have all the forms filled out. Now, if we're trying to find the sixth term, right over here, x plus y to the sixth power, it's all about following the patterns the rest of the entries is showing us. So just by looking at the entries as is, I know that all of them end in a one, start with a 1, and they also end in a 1. So to fill in my next term, I'm just going to put a 1 on both ends. Now it seems here, for me to find the middle numbers, I'm actually adding the numbers that are above. So we have 1 plus 2 gives you 3, 1 plus 3 gives you 4, 1 plus 4 gives you 5. So here, if I'm doing 1 plus 5, I'm going to get 6. This is 5 plus 10, that's going to give you 15. 10 plus 10, that gives you 20. 10 plus 5, another 15. And 5 plus 1, a 6. Okay. And if we wanted to go ahead and find our seventh term, again, you're ending with the 1s, but you're going to add different numbers. So 1 and 6 gives you 7. 6 plus 15, that's 21. 15 plus 20, that's 35. 20 and 15, that's 35 again. And then we have here another 15 and a 16, that is a 21. 1 and 6 gives you 7. Okay, that's how this Pascal's triangle is going to work. Now, let's look at this binomial. I'm trying to expand it, right? It's multiplying by itself by the fourth power. So we're going to actually look right over here, this format. Okay, so first I'm going to rewrite the coefficients. So I have a 1, I have a 4, I have a 6, I have a 4 again, and I have a 1. Okay, and then we need to identify what's our x or y, or what is our first term and what is our second term. Okay, so just by looking at this, my first term, that's going to be 2g. And my second term, that's going to be a negative 1. Now I'm choosing a negative 1 because all of these, they all follow the form plus 1. So if you see a negative, you just want, instead of just writing a positive 1, you're going to write a negative 1. Okay, so now we have to fill in our, how these terms are going to change. So the way they're going to change is that they're going to change by their exponents. The first term, the exponents decrease, or they go down. And the second term, the exponents increase, or they go up. So if I was going to go ahead and rewrite this, this is going to be first x to the fourth, then it's going to go like x to the third, x to the second, and then x to the first. Now I'm not going to write the 1 over there, I'm just going to leave it blank, but we can't go over the 1, so we're going to stop right there. Now we're going to go into the second term. So I have the second term, it's going to start right under this, right behind x to the third. So it's always going to start in the second part, this part. This is going to be y. And remember, it's increasing. Y to the second, y to the third, and y to the fourth. Okay. And all of these are going to have a plus sign because these forms only have the pluses right here. When you multiply a positive and a positive number, it's going to give you positive numbers throughout. Okay, so here I just took out my basic form. And now that I have my basic form, I can start replacing. So I'm not going to write the coefficients 1 because anything multiplied by 1 is itself. So I'm going to leave that out. But I'm going to start substituting the x's and the y's. And remember, my x is going to be 2g, and my y is going to be -1. So let's first replace our x's. So my first term, 2g to the fourth, plus 4 2g to the third. Gotta leave some space. 6 times 2g to the second, plus 4 2g plus, and then there's a blank. Okay, so now let's go ahead and replace our -1, our second term. So my second term, I'm just going to write here a -1. And then it's y squared, so it's going to be -1 squared. It's going to be y cubed, so it's going to be -1 cubed. And y fourth, this is going to be -1 to the fourth power. Okay, so everything's replaced, and now I have to go ahead and simplify everything. So remember, with exponents, you're distributing the exponents. So for this one, it'll be, so for 2g to the fourth power, it's going to be the same as 2 to the fourth times g to the fourth. And 2 to the fourth is the same as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is going to be give me 16 g to the fourth. So this first one is going to be 16 g to the fourth. Okay. Again, here you want to distribute everything. So here I'm going, let me just do my calculations right over here. To this, 2g to the third is the same as 2 to the third, g to the third, and that's going to be the same as 8g to the third. So I'm doing the coefficient 8 times 4 times -1. So 8 times 4, that's 32, times -1, that's -32 g to the third. And then it's the same thing right over here. I'm going to be distributing my exponents, and I'm multiplying these numbers, but this time -1 has exponent. So let's do the calculation right over here. I'm going to be doing 6. Oh, sorry. Let me not start with 6. So what I'm going to do here is that I have a 2g to the second. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute that. That'll be 2 to the second, g to the second, which is 4g to the second. And you're multiplying this by -1 to the second power, which is the same as saying -1 times -1, which just gives you 1. So you're multiplying, for this part, you're doing 6 times 4 times 1, if I'm multiplying all the coefficients. So all of this is going to give you a positive 24. And you want to also include that g squared. So that's how you got from there. And now it's going to be the same idea. I'm multiplying the 4, 4 and the 2, and the negative 1 to the third power. So negative 1 to the third power, that's the same as saying negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1, that's positive 1. Positive 1 times negative 1, it's going to give me a negative 1 again. So with all my coefficients, I'm doing 4 times 2 times negative 1, and you're going to get a negative 6. So this one will be a negative 6g. Now here, negative 1 to the 4th power, that's going to be the same as negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. So these two, they're both negative. So I know it's going to be a positive 1. This is both negatives. That's going to be a positive 1. So you're really doing 1 times 1, which gives you a positive 1. And this is going to be my final answer. So instead of me expanding it and multiplying, doing FOIL, I just found its basic form, and this is the answer to this binomial.